Your Creative Push, episode 255.
You can just feel it like in your body. If you are supposed to be doing something, you can feel it.
Welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngman Brown, and my guest today is Shawny Sheldon. Shawny has been an art teacher for 25 years, and I had her on the show to kind of have a counterbalance to our last episode with Noah Bradley, where he talks about why you should not go to art school. And I wanted to bring somebody on who is a great example of an amazing influence on young minds and a shining example of why an art education is not only necessary when you're growing up in your formative years, but why you need such a positive influence in your life to push you in the right direction. Shawny talks about her poor eyesight as a child and how that affected her as a person and as an artist. And then she tells us the path that she took to finally become an art teacher. Some of her early influences, like her father, New York City, the great masters, and the decision that she made when she was faced with the choice of either going the commercial route or teaching. And then her decision to forge forward with her goals, even though people told her that she could not find a job as an art teacher. Shawny talks about the influence that teachers and professors have and why they should not be discouraging. And also some of the fears that she had in her personal work when she started her Instagram account and then participated in Inktober for the first time. She talks about learning to let go of perfect and also some of the most important messages that she attempts to teach to her students, not just about art, but about life. An inspiring story from one of my favorite people. She's been a long-time listener of the show, and I'm just so thrilled to have her on the show to share her story. So please do enjoy my conversation with Shawny Sheldon. Shawny, welcome to Your Creative Push.
Hi, glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for being here. It's a real pleasure to kind of connect. We've been talking back and forth for, I guess, like a year now. So it's cool to finally meet you and have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
So I was wondering if you could start out like we usually do with giving a brief intro, kind of how you got to the point you are today in your kind of creative life.
Sure. Well, I've been doing art all my life, and as a very, very young child, I've often reflected on this. I had vision problems, and I think that my parents we were very poor growing up, and I had very bad eyes, like age 2. And they saved all their money, and we went to New York City for a consultation. And I know it's a young age, but I do have a very early memory of riding on the train there. And the doctor said, well, instead of an operation, do eye exercises. And I think that's where I learned a lot of discipline. So every day with my mom, I did these eye exercises, and my eyes got better. And I always remember her telling me that we were riding in the car, and for the first time I saw a cow. And she said she just wanted to cry because I had been like a very grumpy, frustrated little kid. And it was because I didn't have very good vision. So I think, I'm just kind of guessing that from that point on, I was very excited about visual things. I was very happy about everything around me. So I think I didn't take that for granted. And as a little kid back then, I'm almost 60. So I had glasses, which was very unusual at that time. Today, they're more common. So, I think that kind of led me into being excited about things like that. We lived way out in the country. I had very few playmates. So I had to invent a lot of things. And when you don't have a lot, it's easier to be creative, I guess. Or is it more difficult? I mean, you have to invent things. So it lends itself to being creative. So whatever I had around me, I invented. And we lived out in the country. And then just as I got older, I was in nature a lot and rode my bike. And unlike today, I don't know. I mean, I rode my bike everywhere, and my parents were not hovering over me like today. People don't even let their kids like walk a block. I mean, I had to, no, honest. I mean, it's like, they are helicopter parents, and I just felt such freedom as a child. And I still feel very free to this day And nature, again, is one of those things I think that influences my art of water. I've always been connected to water. We grew up near a creek, and a couple of times it flooded. That wasn't good times, but I lived near the Delaware River as well. Both my grandparents had places on the river, and I canoed and I swam in the river. And then I moved out here to San Diego and had ocean. I've always been connected to water. I'm kind of getting a little off track here, but all those things develop or play a part in your artwork. You don't realize it at the time. I didn't even realize it when in my early 20s, but it all leads to who you are, and that comes out in your artwork. So I was a normal kid, made things, kind of a little isolated, very shy, but I loved school. And then in high school, I took art, but I was not one of those kids that was the good drawer. And in fact, the art teacher had his pets. And I remember this very clearly because he favored this girl who could draw realistically. So the rest of us, he let us do clay, which I was happy. He called us mud hogs or something because, clay is mud. But it was a lot of fun. And I had fun in art class. I didn't feel put down, but I do recalling that it was art is for a special group. And I never really liked that teacher very much. And so now my other big influence with growing up was my father. And he passed away a few years ago. He influenced me greatly because he was an artist and he worked in sculpture, wood. And he was a woodworker since age 14. And his story and the way he raised us always inspired me because he worked with his hands. And he always tells about when he was 14, he built a boat and he had to go get people. He built his own boat, and he also used that to rescue people when there was a big flood in Pennsylvania at that time. That's where I grew up. And he was a master woodworker, but he wasn't able to make a living from his art. But he did custom woodwork, he did custom kitchens, anything you needed in wood, my father could do. And he was in the Air Force, and he did and I saw his drawings a few years ago before he passed away. Beautiful, architectural renderings. He built our house in Pennsylvania. He was just kind of like the Renaissance man. And growing up, he always talked about the great masters. And even though when we were little, we were very poor, we had sculpture in the house. And he traded art for our beds. We were that poor because he was, he worked with his hands. And then we did things like custom kitchens. That took a long time to do. And I'm very glad I grew up poor because it just makes you really appreciate things. And so we had abstract art in the house. And I was always proud, when kids came over, they didn't understand abstract art. And I always thought it was cool because I just felt very comfortable. My father's sculptures were abstract. And then a lot of the paintings in our house in the early 60s were abstract. So I always felt a level of comfort with things that weren't necessarily pictorial. And so to this day, a lot of my work is abstract, and I feel very comfortable with that. So moving forward, high school, I didn't feel I knew I loved to make things with my hands, but I didn't feel any confidence or anything to major in art. I just wasn't one of those selected people. So I went to college and I majored in French because it's what I did really well in. But I didn't know what I was going to do with French. And I kept changing my mind in college. I was even a weather person for a semester. I thought I liked nature, so I thought I would study weather. I mean, it was just crazy. And nobody was there to help me, decide what my real love was. And then it was like, I don't know, it was like maybe a sophomore in college. It was like one of those deadlines where you had to, if you wanted to change your major, you had to do it. And I just thought, fuck it, man. I'm going to major in art. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I love to make things. And I don't know what I'm doing, but isn't college like where you're supposed to learn stuff? So that's what I did. And I just jumped into the art department. My dad knew a few people, and I just took everything there. I lived at home. It was a little town in the Poconos. That's where I grew up. And I went to the school there, and I got my feet wet, but I certainly wasn't the best. And I didn't feel confident in my skills, nor did I know what I was going to do with this art degree. Fortunately, I wasn't like in great debt because schools seemed to be cheaper then. And I did live at home, and I traveled when I could up and down. I would go to New England or drive friends to like North Carolina. I remember doing that and getting into photography. And it was during that time I made art friends. So I tell my own students, like, if you don't find your tribe in high school, hopefully you find it in college. And even though the art department was small, I made friends with this other girl, and we'd go into New York City, like a lot. And it was only 75 miles. So it was like, oh my God, I came from this I call it my small white bread town. And it's still kind of like that. It's just so white bread. I go back there and I just laugh, and my kids laugh because, they grew up here in San Diego. So we go back to there to visit. But the good thing was that I could travel into New York City. I would drive my car to some place in Jersey and take the bus. And I just had my map. And New York City is so easy to figure out because it's on a grid style. And I just discovered the Met and the Guggenheim and MoMA. And again, my parents, I was only in my early 20s, and I'd go into New York City. And at the time, they were like, people were like robbing people of their jewelry. But, I'm kind of tiny and petite, and I just kept my head down. And I just knew where I was going. So I would just walk all over the city, and just all these paintings, like you would go in the Met. I mean, I don't know if you've had this experience of knowing some art history that you only look at in books, and then you walk in the museum and it just totally blows you the hell away. Like, here is the artist that you've been studying, and you can stand right in front of this artwork where the artist stood and painted this thing, and you get to see it. And it just was like, I went in almost every week or every other week. At that time there was no internet. So my dad always got the New York Times, and I would look to see what's going on. And I had my art friend, Tara, that I would go in the city with. And then I graduated, and I kept waitressing because I didn't know what to do with this art degree. And then I was waitressing, and my friend said, does anybody want to come to California with me? And I'm like, you know what? It was just those things. I didn't even hesitate. I was tired of my tiny town, though I love New York. I was almost considering, should I move to New York? And all this time I was doing artwork. My dad had a lumber business, and I got all the Freemason I ever wanted that I painted on, and I painted a lot. So I was like, I didn't even hesitate. We picked out a date on the calendar, and we drove out to California. And I was like a fish out of water, and everyone said you won't be able to get a job. But I had experienced waitressing, and all I knew was that I always land on my feet. And there were naysayers. Oh, you're going out there without a job. There's no jobs, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm in my early 20s, and California sounds so cool. And I have a car. And it was just, for me, didn't even think about it. So I moved out here, And we both got jobs, my friend and I, and it was culture shock. It was just culture shock. And we didn't have a lot of money, and we didn't live in a very good section of town. So that was an eye opener. And it's just so funny as I think about it. And there's no GPS. So every time you were driving like to work and we had to share a car, I'd ask my friend, oh, did you use your map today? And then like we got to the point we didn't have to use our map to find our way around this city. You have to remember, I came from a very small town. There were freeways here, and it was just crazy. And it was just like so much fun. And then I decided that I had to hone my skills. If I'm calling myself an artist, which I really didn't too much to anybody, because I felt like I still didn't have those skills. So I hadn't even been here a year, and I wanted to enroll in community college to take life drawing. Because like if you can draw, I remember my dad always telling me, draw the human body. It just leads to everything. Like if you can get the proportions down, it's like fantastic exercise. So I called the professor, and even though I hadn't been here a year, I wasn't, quote, a resident, he let me into the class. And then I just took more community college classes. And I didn't know that they were designated OA. I didn't know this. It meant older adults. They were all free. I went into the class. I was like the only 20-year-old. So the teacher was always like, oh, what are you doing here? And I just honed my skills that way. And I became really good at watercolor. That became my thing because I didn't have any more masonite to paint on. And I went to the lumber yard here, and I realized that masonite was kind of expensive. So I switched to watercolors because I thought that would be cheaper. And so I took a very good teacher at community college. And of course, she recognized that I was like the youngest one in the group. There was all these, I'm not putting older people down, but they were like little Sunday painters, and they painted like cute little watercolors. But she knew that I was much more serious. And it's what I did in my free time. I waitressed, and I painted a lot. And I spent time outdoors painting, which I don't paint now, but I painted down like in the public parks here, and, the shipyards, boats. I was fascinated by boats. And again, the water connection for me, I felt very at home by boats. So I did a lot of that. And I said to her one day, her name was Nancy. I said, Nancy, and I'm like, now I'm in my mid-20s. I'm like, I'm at a crossroads. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with my life. I couldn't keep waitressing because it's kind of physically hard. And I had this, college degree, right? My parents were like, when are you getting a real job? But the truth was, I made good money waitressing. I'd even bought a house. So I was like, okay. And she goes, well, you can go into teaching, or you can go the commercial route. And when she said that, teaching sounded so much fun. And like graphic design or commercial route sounded like you would have to always be tweaking your art, or maybe my art wasn't good enough, or like please other people. And art just sounded fun. And I swear that day I drove out to San Diego State, and I'm like, I already have this 4-year degree. What do I need to get a teaching credential? And that's what I did. And I became very focused. I didn't go out at night anymore. I didn't party. People were like, what's wrong with you? But like, I didn't go out drinking anymore at night. I was just set into my way that like, this was what I was going to do. And so I did the coursework for that. And then when you actually got to do like your student teaching, the woman who ran the program, there was only like 3 or 4 of us in this thing to be student teachers. And she goes, there's no job teaching art. And again, I just said, fuck it. You got to be kidding me. Somebody has to die or retire. Like, I know that there are people teaching art in public schools. So I just didn't let that deter me. I don't think it deterred the other people in the program. There's only a few of us. I just got a job teaching art. Like I just got my foot in the door teaching art in an after school program that nobody wanted to teach, like to these kids who, like misfit kids that needed a credit. And I just said yes to everything when I was student teaching. And I got my foot in the door that way. And my teaching job, I was teaching some other things besides art. And then after a few years, I was just teaching all art and I had a contract. So that's what I've been teaching like 25 years in the public school system, high school only. I got to say, it's just like been a fun ride. It's not for everybody, but I saw my parents struggle. I did not want to be poor. I wanted a steady income, and teachers make okay money. And my summers off. And I know, people say the starving artist, but I like living in like a nice house. I like electricity. I like driving a nice car. And it was just kind of the pathway for me. I mean, I didn't know I was going to end up teaching for as long as I have, but I just stayed with it. And that's what I ended up doing.
I love it. And I love the way that you forced your way in. And I think that's a really good lesson for people. Like if you have that goal, like you want to be a teacher, whatever you want to get out of your kind of creative career, whatever kind of piques your interest, it's forcing your foot like in the door, and taking that first step. Even if it isn't exactly what you see yourself doing long term, it's like the first step in your journey to getting to that ultimate goal.
Exactly. And if you can just feel it like in your body. If you are supposed to be doing something, you can feel it. And you cannot let the naysayers, and like I didn't have family members. I mean, I was single and not married at the time, no kids. I was so free. So I didn't, and I have always my mom and dad always supported me with whatever I wanted to do. But I had that, you can't let naysayers, they're out there. So whatever your direction is, and when you hit that, some people sadly never do. And it can be the humblest thing, whatever it is that you love to do, but you have to do it with great enthusiasm and energy. And I know you've had people on the podcast when I was studying to be a teacher. And, we need to talk about this, about teachers who have said bad things to kids, negative things can damage. Even in college, I talked to a former student the other week. She came over. Sometimes I keep connected with a couple kids who have majored in art. And she said, even in college, just a few years ago, she didn't paint the way the professor wanted her to because she does more figurative work. And the professor was all into abstract messiness. And she got a C in the class. And I was just like, wow. And the fact that she remembered that, and I could tell it kind of bothered her. And so those things, just like doctors or some professions, teachers have great power and they can abuse it. And I think anyone who says something negative to a child about something that they're putting out there is an unhappy person. I think they're either frustrated with their own life or very unhappy. They're just kids making art. Most of these people are not going to go on to do art as a career. They're there to learn about art. And the best thing I can do is turn them on to art. Because it can be a passion that lasts forever. You don't have to major in art or make money from art to enjoy creating.
I agree completely. And I think that you're right. It's being a positive force for people. And I think whether you're a teacher or not, to kind of be that beacon, I guess, for other people that you find yourself with. And if you see like a slight just glimmer of interest in pursuing art or getting better at art or whatever kind of creative passion it is, to be like an encouragement for that person, whether they're good or bad or they're not doing like what you do. Like if you can just see that glimmer of a spark of an idea to to have an interest in doing something creative, to just be that person that encourages them to continue to pursue that, because they might not have had any person in their life tell them to go forward. And just like those bad comments can like completely deter somebody from like pursuing their creative passion, you can also be that one person that really spurs them to start a creative life.
Exactly. And, teaching high school kids come in and they go, oh, they're very shy. And so I'm just really positive. I tell everyone it's just like baby steps. And it's just like us in our own lives, you, me, people you have on, you have to honor where you're at. If you are sitting next to a kid that looks like they're doing really cool stuff, I tell them it's because they do it all the time. And if you want to get better at anything, you do it all the time. And what's really fun is that I have, like 5 groups of kids a day, every day, for an hour from September through June. And I go, you just listen to me, do this, and you will see your skills grow. And I just make it very comfortable. I'm not saying I'm some great teacher, but what I do want kids to do is just be happy where they're at, create art, and not compare themselves. What's that saying? Like, comparison is the death of joy. You go on Instagram, sometimes you go on these things. I'm like, oh my God. Before I posted on Instagram last year, I'm like, oh my God, all these people are so good. And I'm older. I should be further along. And then I'm like, nope, you can't think that way. Everybody is at a different place depending on their experiences.
Right. Well, can you talk about that a little bit? Because when we first kind of connected, you were just kind of started your Instagram account, and can you talk about that, like the fears that went into that, and like what kind of encouraged you to just do it anyway?
Sure. So again, as a teacher, like you can't fool anybody, especially teenagers. You have to be very authentic and you have to walk the walk. And I'm always telling kids to do something that makes them feel uncomfortable. And I wish I would have invented that, but it was really my daughter's piano teacher who taught her much more than piano, but he had that little thing. Do something like every week. I tell my, put yourself in something that makes you feel uncomfortable. And if you're a very shy person, maybe it's talking to your teacher about your grade or whatever it is. Do something that you're uncomfortable with. So I got really cool kids, so they come in and this kid's like, oh, do you know about Inktober? And he's like this older kid, a senior, and he really liked art. He was very good at drawing. And I was like, oh no. And I didn't, I was like, what's Inktober? And then he told me about it. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll do that. And I'm like, oh my God, what the hell am I getting myself into, And
yes.
So it was like, oh my God. He goes, yeah, you do a drawing a day with a prompt. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like I can't lose face, right? I have to walk the walk. And, some of these kids have Instagrams. And I'm like, okay, if I'm telling other people, I have to do it too. And no matter, some of these kids are like I don't do faces. Okay. I know who I am. Like I'm not good at portraiture or things like that. And, other kids are. I have kids that are like, have better skills than me and they're like 17 or 18. So I'm like, okay. So I start with the prompt and it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. All of a sudden I was the student in a way. Okay. Like here you are given a prompt with Inktober. And for people who don't know, it's just like, I think it's like globally around the world. And, who's the guy I think you had him on the show, didn't you?
Yeah. Jake Parker.
Yeah, Jake. Yeah, like awesome artist, So I did this and I didn't even open Instagram. I was like, oh my God, I can't post this. It was just something silly I did. And then the next day it was like, oh, one of the words was noisy. And I'm like, God, I was like, I almost hit rock bottom. I go, this is so boring. Like I drew a blender because every morning and I'm in bed, my husband like gets up early to go to the gym, and I don't know what he does with this blender, but it's so noisy. So I'm like, oh my God, okay, blender. And it's like, and I don't draw real precisely. So it's like, okay, drew blender. I go, oh my God, this is so boring. So I don't know what prompt it was, but I don't know why I like hedgehogs. Like, I don't own one because they're illegal here. And I have 2 dogs. Like, that's enough, right? So I have this thing for hedgehogs. So I don't know what prompt I started with. I can't remember, but I started with a hedgehog. But anyway, so what I started doing, I started making every prompt for the day go with the hedgehog. And then my daughter was like, Mom, you should name the hedgehog. So she became this little character. It just grew out of this Inktober. And then I guess eventually I opened Instagram again because, and then the students helped me. Like, I figured it out, but I'm not real tech savvy. But when you work with teenagers, you don't need to be. They know everything.
Yeah, they got your back.
Oh my God, they got me totally. And so instantly I go, I'm not really allowed to follow you guys, but you can follow me. So I just started making the prompts go with this little hedgehog, like she was showering. I don't have my thing here, and then I just started with this little Lily character, and I was actually coming out of like a dark period in my life. And that's another whole story. Like, everybody, when you go through a dark time, you think you're alone. But the truth is, everyone has really shitty times in their lives. And when you go through a dark time, you can come out stronger, hopefully, if you're resilient. And you have like a new compassion. When things don't go right in your life, it's actually a new opportunity for you to reinvent something or to be better at something. So I saw in this little Lily this character of strength and happiness. And, I think I have her going downhill on a skateboard, like do something scary. That's the same take on put yourself in an uncomfortable place. So one day, my daughter, she's in college, but we communicate. She's like 6 hours away. She's like, one day she goes, Mom, you're Lily, aren't you? I go, yeah, I'm Lily. So if you look carefully at my Lily, there is usually a little double message. And Lily just does things that I like to do, like go to the beach or hike or, kayak. I've got various things in there, cooking. And then I started with holidays. I thought that would be fun. And then I have, I think, one for the election. Lily was very worried. And so it kind of chronicles, Lily is me in a way. And I took a little break from Lily in the spring, but now I posted Lily the other day. So I'm going to continue with Lily because it's been fun. And I'm not an illustrator. And another reason I kind of took a break from Lily, and this is another thing about walking the walk, I tell my kids this is huge. This is huge. I think what I'm going to say, young men, but you probably already know, let go of perfect. Let go of perfect. And so I would usually do Lily in like pencil. I didn't really do a lot of little sketches. I just would get an idea. But then when I was inking, if I goofed up, guess what? I had to start over. Mm-hmm. And that started me like not anxiety, but I mean like, oh shit, I got to start over. I was like, oh man, I was almost done. And then like I goofed. And honestly, probably like I'd show my husband and he goes, I don't know what you're talking about. But I said, yeah, I goofed. And so there I was telling my students not to worry about perfect, because that will take you down the rabbit hole. Perfectionism is actually, it's not about being meticulous. It's about fear.
Right.
It's about fear. And so there I was, and I wasn't doing what I tell my students to do. I teach a population of students who can be very much perfectionist. And in my teaching, in art, you have to let that go or you will not grow in your work. You have to be willing to wake up and get rid of everything you've made or paint right over it. You have to really let go of perfect.
Yeah, it's like you were saying before, just to honor where you're at and to like understand that, yeah, compare and despair. Like you go online, you go on Instagram, you see all these people that are posting like the best version of themselves, the best something that's taken them forever to do. And like if you're doing like a drawing a day and that's your goal, like a goal like Inktober, you have to like be able to let go of perfect, like you said, to be able to just put that stuff out there.
Yeah, and it's like it's intimidating. That the whole social media thing is a little intimidating, but again, like you just said, you have to honor where you're at and let go of perfect. I think it was Drew on your show, and I've used this. I don't know if he invented it, but better to be done than perfect, to be done on time, right? Something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Being somebody who finishes something rather than somebody who takes forever to try to get the perfect amount. Like people are expecting it like at a certain date. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And now like in my own painting, I have no one to answer to because like I make a living. So I have great freedom to paint. I love that. And with my own students, I mean, really my role is to help these kids bridge to adulthood. And it's just not about art, but just like I said, doing things that are uncomfortable and meeting the deadline. It might not be your best work, but they have to learn. Most of these kids are going on to college. You have to get it done. You have to get it done when it's due. You know that. You've been to college. You've had deadlines. Like I'm sure in this podcast, you have to get things done.
And that's the beauty of something like Inktober is it kind of takes that pressure off in a way, like that open-ended type of thing where you're like, well, like nobody's necessarily looking for this. Like I could just put this off. Like this piece isn't really that good, but it gives you that prompt and that mandate. Then what happened with you is like, if you keep doing stuff, even if it's like you don't know what to do for a particular prompt, like you're like, this is boring, nobody's going to like this, and then all of a sudden that one day you do something that clicks, like for you with Lily, you're like, oh, this makes sense. Let me continue with this thing, So it's like really getting your ass in the chair, giving yourself something to do, a prompt, finding a way to have some sort of mandate, something that you have to get out there, something that you think people are expecting to see, and just keep on doing that over and over again, not making it perfect, but just keep shipping, just keep putting stuff out there until you do find that thing that clicks, that will take you on a different path, a different journey that will sustain you past Inktober,
Oh, well said. Yeah, that's so true. You have to show up day after day. I mean, we hear people say this all the time, and it's true. Yeah, you're right on with that. You have to show up every day. And I mean, that's something else I want to talk about is the art practice. I work really well with structure. Maybe, that's the whole thing. When you go to school or you're in college, you are very structured and you see great growth. I see my son now is studying art, and he did not draw in high school at all. I mean, just, basic art class. But when you are in a structured environment and you have to do it and you get it done, your skills grow. And I think what happens sometimes is kids get out of like college and they don't know what to do. Like myself, I didn't know what to do with those skills. And then, you learn it, but developing the art practice. And if your day job like you is not really your thing, look how you've just thrown yourself into this podcast. And how many people, like, I'm sure that your podcast is like more, you love it much more than your day job, but you need to pay the bills.
Yeah, it's not even a comparison.
And you have helped like so many people. Like, I tell anybody, like, if you want to go into art, I told my son, you listen to your podcast. Your podcast is just full of inspiration of people of, some went to school, some didn't, some did this, some didn't have any education, some just kept forging ahead. It's great. Like the service you have provided to people, honestly, young men, is just like, I don't know if you realize it, I mean, before, you have a great podcast and it really can make people stop in their tracks and think, I can do this. I can take this path. I'm a creative person, and you see all these people. So thank you. And I kind of got sidetracked there, but
that's a good sidetrack. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I do hope that it is making a difference, but it's all about that kind of putting yourself out there. And I put all the credit to my guests like you to be able to kind of put themselves out there, be vulnerable, tell about their stories so that other people can connect in some way and hopefully find some inspiration to continue on their path. But could you talk about that then, like your relationship with your son? And I think before you were talking about how in college, like you had nobody to direct you. You were doing like French and meteorology and you didn't really know where to go until you're like, fuck it, I'm just going to do art. You know what I mean? So can you talk about like your relationship with your son and being able to talk about art or talk about creativity or talk about the things that you're going through on your two different kind of journeys at two different points in the timeline of your own journeys and what that has done for both of you?
Sure. Well, in high school, my son was very interested in film and was even thinking about film school. And again, both my children are very, very creative, which makes me happy because, we always did creative stuff. So I always felt like he had creative things, but like many boys, and remember, I've been teaching a long time, sometimes they're slower to mature and sometimes they have trouble like finding their way. So he didn't really want to do film and he was accepted to a school out of town and then that kind of fell apart. And I think he was kind of floundering and he went to community college. And then one day he called me and I realized that when we have a really great relationship, but sometimes like when he wanted to tell me something important, he would like call me on the phone. I mean, we're living like in the same house, right? Or text me. Okay. And he goes, Mom, I just want to stop going to school and travel. And I said, fantastic. Now, my husband was like, oh my God, he's going to drop out of college. I'm like, just let him be, please, because travel. This is the time you do that. You don't do it when you're 40 and have 2 kids, right? And a wife, like Gauguin did. So I'm like, yeah, travel, go do that. And so that's what he did. He had a car and he went around the country, not for really a real long time, but he did that. He had a goal and he had to get that album. So I really like that he knew who he was. And this is what's very, very important is for anybody to know who they are. He knew that this college right now for him was not for him right now. And these people or parents who freak out when their kid wants to do something, let them be. We live in America. We are so lucky, like you and I, we can wake up and sip our little coffee and paint or write because we live in America. There's somebody watching the gate that we have our freedom. So if you're 20, you want to go explore the world, go do that. I tell my students that, which their parents probably don't like. And I'm always talking about being a rebel, because like a lot of these kids are like, yeah, my mom wants me to be a doctor. And they just want to like cut people's hair or something. And I'm like, go do what you want. And if like kids don't know what they want to do, like again, their parents won't like this. I tell them go travel. Go ride around the United States. Our family has made about 2 or I think 3 trips across the U.S. and back, and go see America, go get a passport and do some traveling, and it opens your eyes. And the more you see, it all comes out in your art, and the more interesting life is and the more interesting you are. And when you travel by yourself, you come across all really cool experiences. So my son did that. And then again, so, he travels and he comes back home. And again, so this is, I think I was in the shower, right? There's a shower curtain there. And he had this big thing he had to tell me. Again, right? He didn't want to tell me to my face because he thought I'd cry or something. He goes, Mom, I'm going to move to Santa Cruz. And I'm like, that's fantastic. But honestly, I was kind of like crying in the shower. I go, oh my God. I said, you know what? Because his good friend from preschool, like it's really weird. All right. He's 23. He's been friends with the same kid for 20 years, but they never went to the same school. And his friend is very creative, and he's like a very like go-getter, and he's a writer, majored in English. So I go, that's fantastic. And honestly, you know what? You want your kids. And then after like I cried for 5 minutes, I thought, oh man, I can store all my canvases in his bedroom. So I was like, okay, most parents are like weepy, and I'm like having plans for the empty bedroom. So, so I was like, yay. So he moves to Santa Cruz, and he lives with like a house full of 8 people. Some go to UC Santa Cruz. And he starts going to community college, and he lives like with all these creative kids. Like, I love it. They're living in the garage. They're not supposed to, right? There's like 8 and housing. And if you know anything about housing, anything in a college town, they rip off these kids so bad, Mm-hmm. So his room in the garage was a little bit cheaper and creative. He's painting a lot. He's doing art. Oh, I did forget to mention, he's totally into street art.
Nice.
How could I forget that? So like at night when he was living at home, he'd walk out with his backpack and his spray cans. It was so funny. I'm like, okay, no, remember, like, how old are you? You can get arrested. Please be careful. But that's what he did. He did a lot of street art. God, how could I forget that? And my kids always think that's really cool because I talk about Keith Haring a lot. And when you're a rebel, that's how the world has been made, young men. By rebels. Mm-hmm. It's everyone who thought to be different. Keith Haring got arrested. I have a great video on him. I show the kids. I love it. And they're like, because they're like kind of from sheltered backgrounds. And so he goes to the subway and he draws. So my son was a street artist. And so he got more into art, moving up to Santa Cruz, started taking a lot of art classes. But I didn't want to show him how pleased I was because when you have a kid, you're like, oh, wow, they like what I like, right? But I always knew he was really creative. And he just started taking all these community art classes full of great teachers, like really good teachers. And so I always believe in the community college system because it's a lot cheaper. And he has just gotten the best education. And his work, I just like slowly, honestly, and I don't know about slowly, but his work started blowing me away. He would send me pictures of things and I'm like, wow, his skills just keep growing. And then sometimes we talked about how his street art really helped him. It helped him work fast, and it helped him work like holding a can like really straight. It helped him with like various motor skills. So my point is everything we do leads us somewhere. And the more we try, that's how we find out what we love and what we don't love.
Absolutely. Just like we were talking about with like the Inktober stuff, and just like we're talking about with like traveling till you figure out like what you really want to do. It's tough whenever your parents have like a certain goal for you. They're like, they want you to be a doctor. They want you to be so-and-so. And I think I just love your support that you give not only to your students, but to your family, to your kids about, all right, you want to do this, go try it. Like, and just be an encouragement to them. And then you do get an empty room as well.
Yeah. It's like, oh my God. And when he comes home, like, okay, I got to move the canvases to my daughter's room. Oh no, she's coming home. So it's kind of like a joke because I like to have a stockpile of canvases.
That's awesome. Musical chairs.
Yeah, really. It's like, okay, move the canvases. I don't know if he's going to go into teaching. He's talked about it. And like sometimes kids in their 20s, they start like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Everybody has a different path in life. I actually I like having a home. I don't mind having a mortgage, but that is not the dream of everybody. Some people like to travel around with their backpack and a sketchbook and a pencil. You can do that. You can do anything you want to do. Because why? Because we live in America. Don't sit around and whine and sit on your ass and say, I don't know what to do. The whole world is open to you. You can do anything you want. I'm really glad to see like my son pursuing what he wants, and everybody should do that. But you have to find out what you love and what you don't love. Like me, I'm never going to be a basketball player. Okay, I'm 5 foot, 100 pounds. I'm not going to be a basketball player. I'm not going to dance in a great ballet. Like, I know what I'm not. And once you find what you are, then it can just like, your purpose. You wake up with purpose in the morning. And I think that's what some people that are unhappy, that aren't happy with their lives, they feel like they don't have a purpose.
Exactly. It's finding that purpose, like being willing to like be shitty at a lot of different things and experiment and figure yourself out. And then when you do find that purpose, then it's just like off to the races.
Oh, it totally is. Like you just, you hit your stride. So that's kind of me. And once I found out teaching, it was a lot of fun. And I got to say, I love my summers off. Sometimes it's hard to go back. Like I go back to work tomorrow. But I wake up in the morning, like when the kids are there, and it's just fun. It's like, we're going to do art today. And it's like, hey, kids, you know what? We all made it through the night, because like not everybody did. Like if you have that attitude, right? Like you woke up in the morning, you're here, you have a gift. You have the gift of today. That is like all you know. And so like you just make the best of it. And like, I just try to bring that to my students, that to be free and to appreciate things and not get bogged down with, like teenagers have like different issues. So you have to be just kind of like very enthusiastic and make them see the big picture and find their purpose.
No, I agree completely. And I appreciate you coming on the show today to kind of help us to find our purpose, Shawny.
Thank you.
Before we let you go, though, you know what time it is. It's time for the final push. And that's where I ask you to reach through the microphone and grab the shoulder of one of the listeners that you've already really inspired today. Just give them your final words of advice and encouragement and really push them to pursue their own creative passions. Okay.
Well, one thing I didn't talk about too much is, and I got this from Austin Kleon, is a bliss station. You need to create a space and a time to do your artwork. So if you want to get more art into your life, you have to change. Well, if you want to change anything in your life, you have to change something you do every day. So have a space and a time. And then that way it becomes a habit. Books have been written on this. It's very important to have a designated time, I feel. And that's where discipline comes in. Once you get that habit, then if you don't do art, you get grumpy. So have that space and time designated. And for me, I'm a morning person. So in the summer, when I'm not working, teaching, I do my art in the morning after I go to the gym. I'm a very early person. And everything is quiet. And I do art. And then whatever else comes along that day, you've got to, your dog, you have to go to the vet, you need a tune-up. You can do all those things. You know that in the morning, whatever it is for anybody. For me, it's morning. You've done that thing for you, your creativeness. And the other thing is to really know who you are and know who you are not. You only know that by trying a lot of different stuff. Like, don't do realistic things. I mean, I teach kids how to shade. I can draw a face, but it's not like what I love to do. So even in like the visual arts, like know what you love to do and know what you don't. And then the other thing I didn't really mention was just unplug from the technology, because you have to go within. Doing art, as you know, you're a writer, you need solitude. And you have to be willing to have that solitude away from things, and going along with unplugging from technology. Spend time, whatever your thing is, spend time in nature, and getting to know who you are, because that is how your artwork will be authentic. It has to come from you. You're only one you. Yeah, your artwork has to show the hand of the maker. And you do that by getting your work at age 20. My work is very different now than it was at like 23. So it grows because you're growing as a person. And the other thing I think is very important in this age of the internet, go look at real art. And if you don't live in a major city, I know that's kind of hard to do, but a lot of our vacations, like we just came back from New York, and they're like, Mom, don't make us spend all day in a museum. But my son and I, it was so funny because my husband and daughter were like, we went to the Guggenheim because we hadn't been there. Last time we spent like a week in New York. We went to MoMA and we spent like all day in the Met. So my husband and daughter were a little bit leery. I said, okay, listen, just give us 2 hours. But there were my son and I, we were still in some of the galleries, like really looking. You need to really look. And I just love it. I'm nearsighted, so I love it when I can stand really close. And like you're standing right where the artist stood and you're looking at actual artwork and not your computer screen or a book. Very important, I think, that artists get out and just go to a local gallery, whatever it is, that you look at the actual artwork itself. I have to really emphasize that. Like the Getty is 3 hours away from here. I love going to the Getty, looking at the old masters. My artwork is not like that, but I just love, you need to study art history. If you are interested in the arts at all, you have to see what came before you. You have to study that. So that's my other bit of advice. And the other thing, of course, I have a lot to say. Sorry.
No, you're good. Don't be sorry.
The whole thing about art is slow. It is slow. It is a slow process, and you build and build your skills. It's like music and dance. I don't know, maybe a surgeon, after 100 surgeries, he's pretty confident. Like, who do you want operating on you, right? Oh, this is the first time you took out like a liver. Oh no. So you realize that it's a slow process. And even me, I'm learning that because my paintings take a long time because they're layers and I glaze, and it's a slow process. And that's almost the beauty of it. Then when you're done, you have hopefully this thing that people connect with. I mean, that's the whole point of art, is that you're creating something that someone else connects with. And for every person out there, there is an artwork for you. What you might love in the art gallery might not be what I love, but there's an art piece for everybody. And that's what makes us unique. And then I guess that's the last thing. Like I said, do something uncomfortable. Like for me, going on Instagram, and now I don't have any, I'll post things that are halfway done. I'll just put them out there so people don't forget me if I don't. My son told me to post often, Mom. He goes, Mom, you're going to do this, you have to post often. I'm like, okay. To do something out of your comfort zone. That is how you grow as a person and artistically. And no matter what field you're in, to do something out of your comfort zone, I think that's about all I have to say.
Yeah, you touched on a lot of really good stuff there. And I think it is important to do those things, like to escape and unplug from technology and not go on social media for a while. I think it's very hard, especially in today's world, to kind of not have other influences really telling you who you are. It really is those self-reflective moments. That's why people get such good ideas when they're in bed, before they go to sleep or in the shower. It's because you're not surrounded by those distractions, and it's just up to you and your thoughts, So getting out into nature and finding that I like that idea of the bliss station, that set place and time where you put yourself in that position where you are creating and then figuring out who you are. And then, of course, you have to be patient. You have to do it every day. You have to see it as kind of the long journey of a creative life rather than something that you're going to get to today. And then, being patient with that. And then, like you said, putting yourself out there too and getting uncomfortable, finding those opportunities to find those things that kind of scare you and go towards them as well.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Shawny, thank you so much for coming on the show today, for giving us that push, for all your compliments. And I know that you've been listening to the show. You've been talking with your son and daughter about the show. And I just love being able to connect with the people that listen to this show and hearing their own journeys and what they're going through, and kind of seeing that we're all along these very similar paths. We're all kind of going through the same things. So it's really an honor to have you on the show and to get that inspiration from you as well.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. I mean, yeah, and again, thank you for what you do. And yeah, it's like a connectedness here. I think that's what it is too. It's a platform for people to connect in. I'm going to join that Facebook group too you have.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that. Yeah.
Get on there. yourcreativepush.com/group for anybody who hasn't joined. You can join Shawny there, and we're doing some cool things now. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we have all these different kind of share sessions that we're doing. So it's a really bustling community and a good place. You talked before about finding your tribe. If you can't find it in high school, hopefully you can find it in college. But if you don't go to college, or you're at a different point in your life, that's a really great place to be able to connect with other like-minded people online. If you aren't kind of having that kind of tribe that I think we all kind of desperately need so that's a really good resource for people.
Yeah, I need that. In fact, that's what I'm going to do. That's my new thing, because honestly, I never had a Facebook, and we call it fake book sometimes, but nice. I am not calling yours fake book at all. I'm gonna join the group because yeah. So thank you very much.
Of course. And if you want to find more about Shawny, you can check out her Instagram. She is The Plum Dog, and we'll have everything we talked about today linked up at the show notes page at yourcreativepush.com/Shawny, SHAWNY. Shawny, thanks again.
Thank you, Youngman.
My thanks again to Shawny for coming on the show. Lots of great stuff here, but I just want to take this ending summary as a opportunity to encourage you to do Inktober if you are on the fence, or to give you my words of encouragement if you have decided to do Inktober. I will be checking all of you out. Make sure you tag me on Instagram as well, not just Inktober hashtag, but also in your hashtags or whatever. Just mention at Your Creative Push so that I see it, and I will probably repost most of your stuff. It's just a very exciting time for the visual artists out there, and I'm really excited to see what you do. For the writers and for photographers and anybody that's doing anything else that you don't participate in Inktober, we're going to have a couple things coming up, a couple things that I'm actually going to participate in, such as NaNoWriMo in November, which is writing a novel in a month. I won't be writing a novel in November, but we'll be doing something different, as well as our January challenge. We'll be doing that again this year. So if you do want to hop in on Inktober, but you do want to do a 30-day or month-long or whatever self-imposed challenge for yourself, don't feel like you missed the boat. And if you're just hearing about Inktober and you want to check it out, definitely on Instagram, check out the hashtag Inktober. I was going to encourage you all to listen to the Jake Parker interview. He's the one that started Inktober, but instead I figured I would replay that episode. It was one of my favorite episodes anyway, so I figured this would be a perfect time to replay that episode for you on Monday. Also next week we have Glenn Phillips from Toad the Wet Sprocket. It was one of my favorite interviews. It was so cool to talk to him, and I'm so excited for you to hear that interview on Thursday. So something old, something new for you next week as you get started on your Inktober or whatever other challenges you have for yourself. But that is all I've got for you today, so hopefully you were inspired to go and get your work done. So go and get it done, and we'll be here for you next week if you need the push again. I love you all so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Never miss a push. Head to yourcreativepush.com/subscribe to find the easiest way for you to subscribe to the podcast.